What should a Chief Marketing Officer do in their first 100 days? Whether it's as a Chief Marketing Officer or a CMO, as they often call them, or any role, your first 90 to 100 days are very important. In episode 43, we looked at a book called The First 90 Days. That's a great book, and I read it each time I start a new job. It is, however, a very general view on how you approach the first few days of a job. Recently, a friend, John Ellert, published the book called The CMO's Manifesto. It's a much more focused view of the first few months from a marketeer's point of view rather than a general book. Its subtitle is 100-Day Action Plan for Marketing Change Agents. I'm going to review the book this time. By the way, I really should make one disclosure. John is both a friend, a colleague of mine, and he interviewed me for the book, but don't let that put you off. Okay, benefits of having a manifesto. Now, manifesto is a pretty important word, but it can be a bit loaded. But I have to say that I really like the word manifesto. If you look at what it means, a manifesto is described as a public declaration of intentions, motives, or views. In any role, I think it's really good to say what you're going to do and then do it. Whatever the size of your team, sometimes they're small, sometimes they're large, you still have to unify and focus them, and a manifesto is really good for that. The book actually breaks down into 13 elements that's in its manifesto that it thinks a change agent should have, but for many people that might be too many. So my advice is to usually try and find 3 to 6 big issues that cover the team, and you can often combine many of those 13 into much larger ones. However, remember, unlike many politicians, you are probably going to have to be held yourself accountable for what you're going to offer. You can't promise it and then not do it. Okay, thought number 2, get the right list. So it's not only having a list, it's having the right list. And the trick here is to have the list that focus what you need to do. The first 90 days, as well as John's book, both make a very important point. They say you can't guess, but you're going to have to listen to the people and ask lots of questions. I knew a guy who took over as a senior executive and didn't really listen to his new team. He came in knowing all the answers, or assuming he did, and thought he could just repeat past successes and that would be his route to victory. It took him a few months to find out that many of his assumptions were wrong, but because he didn't listen and he didn't ask, he didn't spend the time getting questions that would have helped him build assumptions that were really the problem. And when you build and test assumptions, you really build the stuff, you really create the stuff you can build your manifesto out of. Okay, point number 3, start at the beginning of John's book. The first point in John's manifesto may seem obvious, but it's vital to think it through the way he describes it. The issue is that you are not in this job to maintain the status quo. He talks about being a positive change agent, but really, why would you be anything else? But it really will come to a point where you're going to have to explain that to the team, because remember, for many people, change is never good and never positive. The trick, as the chapter outlines, is linking the expectations of you and your team to your actions. But as important as the expectations is, communicating them is important as well. You cannot miss the first few days to start getting that communication clear and right into everybody. The bottom line is this: John's book offers us both a helpful approach and a great guide to the issues you should consider when you take up your new job as a Chief Marketing Officer.